Welcome, Ollie, to Metallidium Pages. Again, it's a great pleasure to talk to you about now. This time, not about Octoblood of Barred Nerd. So now we're talking about for this anniversary album that Tales from the Thousand Lake, one album that changed the rules in Finland, especially. So we started by asking how was the band been during the last year? Well, during the last years, because I saw that you are playing a lot of gigs around the world.
Yeah, we've been touring like hell for Halo album because right when we released the album, the COVID ended, was kind of fading out already. So the first tour we ever did for after COVID was in North America. We toured with I can't remember the band, Hoaxed, and a couple other bands. Sylvain, yeah, that's right. And yeah, it was first tour, and it was kind of weird because there was still pandemic going on, and yeah, due to that, the shows, yeah, they were all right, but there were people who even didn't attend the show, even that they had the tickets. So it was a little bit weird situation, and therefore it's kind of fun to come over again when the things has normalized a little bit. But still, yeah, we've been doing like every summer we are doing festivals quite a lot, and also a couple European tours, and plenty of shows in Finland, and now we're coming again to North America. Well, I think the touring cycle has been going on for over 2 years already, and it will last until the end of this year. But still, it's time to go to the studio after that to record our next album, and then we will have a little bit of a break and just to start the touring again in the late of 2025.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not talking now, more focus on this from Tales. So what memories does celebrating 30 years of Tales from Thousand Lakes bring back?
Well, it's been 2 years since we recorded the album in Tavastia Club, and well, it was kind of like an awkward situation because there was this pandemic going on, and there were like really strict restrictions in the society. You couldn't let people come in, so there wasn't audience. It's kind of a studio live in that sense, and yeah, it was kind of a not very good situation for a band who is like touring a lot, like we are, but still we managed to do things like this. We recorded Tales from the Thousand Lakes live, and Queen of Time live as well. And well, what memories it brings. I kind of don't recall those days that much. Usually it's a kind of a when somebody asks something, I can come up with some anecdotes, but still I tend to live in this moment and look forward. So yeah, I don't know. Recording of the album was interesting situation, not the best possible situation when it comes to the band, but still, it was good that we did this because we were aiming to celebrate the band's 30th anniversary at the time. We were supposed to go to North American tour with Entombed AD. That didn't happen, but now we can celebrate the album itself, Tales from the Thousand Lakes, with this release.
Okay. I remember reading some comments from Tommy and Esa in the book of the book of Death Metal from Finland. I have one here. I remember that in one of the comments that they say that when you try to deliver this album to Relapse Records is expecting a first album from Abhorrence, and you just got this. I remember they received a call Tommy received a call from Relapse Records saying, "Hey, when will be ready the new album for the first album from Abhorrence?" But instead of this, you have Amorphis, the new stuff from Tales, and then decide to release this. And I remember Tommy says we have a lot of afraid, but this album is not like usual death metal to be in the 90s. But Relapse Records either way released this album, and that's completely successful with a lot of gigs, with a lot of etc. So
Yeah.
at that time when you presented Tales from the Thousand Lakes on to Relapse Records, how do you feel? How do you feel right now? At that moment you have Afraid, and now this album is a great song in Finland.
Mm. Well, I don't know. We were really a small band back then when we did Tales from the Thousand Lakes, so we didn't have that much of expectations for how the album would be received and what would be the response. But still, it was a great surprise for us that it turned out to be a really good seller, and people digged it big time, and we were able to go to on tour after that. With Karelian Isthmus, we didn't tour at all, so it was a really pleasant surprise that we were able to tour in the first place. And yeah, it was kind of a we were not aware of how the album would be because we were too near to it. We just knew that we liked it ourselves, but still we were unsure if people would like it. So it was kind of nice to realize that it would be received pretty well actually, and record label was pretty happy with it also, and lots of our friends told that it's a great album, and we kind of were happy only with that. So we didn't expect much, and we were just happy to play some shows and get free beer from the venues, and that was it. So we didn't. The expectations were not very high in the first place. So, but still, it's Tales from the Thousand Lakes album is our milestone album, and probably that's the album which has taken us to this position in the metal uh, scene in general. I don't know. Karelian Isthmus was received pretty well too, but still it wasn't probably as original as Tales from the Thousand Lakes. And with Tales, so many things just came together. The Kalevala thing and the folk music influences, and cover art is great. And Kasper Mortensen was involved, and he did some really original keyboard parts to Tales from the Thousand Lakes. So it was really like the sum of various good things which happened at the same time.
Okay, okay. So now talking about the lineup from that album. Right now, so you are Tommy, Esa, and Tommy, Esa, and you are the last members that from that album. So because John also, sorry, John also. So, but just Casper retired, or the keyboards of that time retired for the album, and at that time, Tommy was the lead vocals at that time for this new album. So, how now? Do you have still communication with Casper about how do you successful be this album now for the love of the new generation?
Well, I like talk to Casper every now and then, maybe a couple times a year, but we don't see each other that much anymore because he's busy with his work just as we are. He's playing with Erja Lyytinen, who is a great blues guitar player from Finland, and he's not he never was a kind of metal musician, so he probably enjoys playing different kind of music than metal. And I think he told me that he would retire at some place from music playing in general. So It's kind of hard to say. It's kind of pity because he's really great and talented player and great songwriter too. And I would love to see him in the scene in some form. So it's kind of a sad situation that he's not interested in joining any band anymore. But anyway, he's a great guy, great player. I'm happy to know him.
Okay. So in those years, we as a fans only received good reviews in magazines. I remember very well they read a lot of reviews for these new Tales of Thousand Legs. At that time, it was new for a lot of people like me. So especially for the sound. So but did you remember some special negative reviews of that era that said this is not that metal, something like that? You know, the night is more close-minded than now. So
Mm.
perhaps some people don't understand the sound of that time from Amorphis, even the change from Khalid and Itmus to these novels, very different albums. So perhaps do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
remember a special review for that era that does not fits perfectly with the sound that you have now?
I don't actually remember. I do have those old reviews somewhere. I have to probably dig them out. Probably Tales from the Thousand Lakes had really good reviews, but the next album, Elegy, it wasn't received that well because I think that there was like even more of a change, kind of a more bigger leap from Tales from the Thousand Lakes than it was from Karelian Isthmus. There were clean vocals much more in Elegy, so that was first time when we started to receive also a little bit bad reviews. Not everybody liked these changes that we did on the music. So, but anyway, I think with Tales from the Thousand Lakes, the response was mainly positive.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Well, obviously, Amorphis came from a background from the death metal scene, especially in Finland, with bands like Funebres, Sisma, Parthenas, great bands at that moment. So now you are more a progressive death metal band because you mix a lot of things into the music. That is normal. You are still growing up. This evolution is coming out with every songs that you're recording now. So now, how do you see the evolution of the Amorphis since that album to now, and how do you see the young Olli? And how would you recommend to young Olli to the now if you have the opportunity to talk with him now?
Well, I think I was kind of a pretty complex guy when I was younger, and uh, had depression and so forth, and maybe that's one element in which you can hear from the songwriting as well. I think we all were not the happiest guys on the earth. We had pretty much anxiety there. It was like not the best possible place to live Finland back then because well, there was a great depression in economy as well in the early 90s because the Soviet Union has just collapsed and we mostly like exported our stuff to Soviet Union. So Finland became a little bit poorer in one night then, and there was lots of unemployment and actually after the school you went to get the unemployed money. There was no possibility on going to work, but that was kind of a lucky thing for us because we didn't want to work in the first place. We just wanted to play music, and we just enjoyed the money and uh, played death metal in a rehearsing place and drank a lot of beer and smoked lots of cigarettes and yeah, we were kind of punk kids. The scene was little bit mixed. There were punk rockers and metalheads and hippies, and probably we were a hybrid of all those genres. And it was kind of exciting time, even though I wouldn't like to be young again, because it was also pretty difficult times for me, at least. So, but still, I see music and playing in the band as some kind of escapism from that those moods, and it was kind of necessary thing to create something and to play brutal music with friends in order to escape your inner demons or whatever. So yeah, there are lots of good things happened due to those harsh situations and conditions.
Okay, okay. So one detail that always seemed curious to me about Tales from the Thousand Lakes is that it's an album that was not replicated by other bands. Or I mean, or when you hear Kill 'Em All, you hear a lot of a German scene that drinks from that album, and a lot of bands drinks from Kill 'Em All, etc. You recognize a lot of influence, Metallica around the world, Iron Maiden around the world, etc., etc. So uh, or that you have influence or also this album or have influence with the new bands, but even so it's like I said, it's like you said, it's an album that put you in the spotlight on the global metal scene. So what do you think is the reason for this phenomenon that this album is a huge in the world, especially in the metal world, but at the same time not brought new bands with this sound, and just to mark ones, Octoploid and Barret has the sound of the Tales, but is your band. You are part of the composer of that albums. That is normally you have a lot of comparisons with the Until of Thousand Legs, but other bands, I didn't hear any new band with the Tale sound. That's weird. A huge album, but at the same time don't bring a lot of bands with this album.
Well, yeah, that's a good question, and yeah, it's interesting one as well. I somehow could hear a tiny Amorphis influences in some early Opeth albums, like Still Life, for example. It's kind of a doomy music with growling vocals. In that way, it's a little bit similar. I don't know if it's intentional or what, but still, it's we were kind of with Paradise Lost, we were probably the doomiest death metal bands those days in the metal mainstream. So the other bands tends to be a lot faster, for example. If you think about Entombed or Carcass and Morbid Angel or whatever bands, of course there was bands like Moonspell, which was a little bit more gothic or whatever, and Dark Tranquility, but still, yeah, maybe the vocals are the most like recognizable thing in Tales from the Thousand Lakes, because Tommy was really unique growler, and also Casper was a really different kind of keyboard player if you compare him to any other keyboard players in metal, because he only played kind of vintage sounds. So yeah, I don't know why there aren't any copycats. That's a good reason. good question, and I cannot say why is this actually.
Okay. One detail that you mentioned is that those years you wanted to play brutal music with friends. And now, I remember this in this book that I read from the Finnish death metal. So Tommy said that at that time you want to play just brutal music. So it's the same conception that you have, just brutal music with new influence or the influence that you have at that moment. That's normally. But now, as you can see, this concept of brutal in the world takes different concepts. There's more, sometimes more experimental, progressive. I don't know, a lot of things. So for you, how will you compare this concept to get beyond far this concept of brutal music with the 90s compared to now? How do you see these really different changes?
Yeah, I don't know about any other bands, but still, I'd see that when we talk about brutality in Amorphis, it's not kind of aggressive brutality. It's more like creating the moods in the music, to the music, and we are not trying to be angry or whatever. It's not the way to represent any negative moods. It's more kind of positive or dreaminess or whatever. But when it comes to nowadays bands, to be honest, I don't know many of them, but still there. If we talk about death metal, for example, I think many or maybe all of the death metal bands nowadays are reminding me of 90s death metal. It's kind of hard to come up with original style if you talk about metal music nowadays. So therefore, it's kind of understandable that bands are digging their influences from the best possible resources. And I think during the 90s, death metal is in its finest. Bands like Dismember, Entombed, and Morbid Angel. Well, you know those bands. I think that hasn't been done in any kind of better manner than it was at the time. And I don't know if it's even possible, you know. I don't know. Maybe you can mention me a couple death metal bands not from nowadays or metal bands even, which I should listen. I don't know much about that.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks. So you are in you have you and when you try to start the Amorphis band, also you already took in a place in other bands like Nux Vomica or bands from the 80s that, that trying to play death metal. Obviously, there is Funeral as like the first stone, like the first death metal band there, according to that book. There is the first band death metal in you. And one thing that I want to ask is a lot of people is I remember there appears like 20 bands in the ends of the 80s and beginnings of or early 90s. I remember that well, very well. But in some point, a lot of these bands disappear or change the concept of death metal in the Finlands. Parthenos disappear, Funeral disappear, Disgrace change, this etc. And we can count Abhorrence never released a full album at that time. So Amorphis changed the concept or the music, more progressive, more doomy, more this stuff since the second album. So for you, what are the reasons at that time in the 90s that the mostly of these huge bands now or legends bands in the Finland disappear or change the concept into death metal and not like the Swedish scene? As you can see, the Swedish scene Entombed continues a death metal career. Dismember same, and we can count more bands. So what are the reasons that the Finland scene at that moment don't demolish either way, don't just an album and then disappear completely? So
Mm.
why the death metal scene at that time disappeared from the 1993 to just to the beginnings of 2000, then reborn again the death metal scene
Yeah.
in
Well, as far as I know, there was lots of bands which weren't that serious in music business. Like they were not that determined to build the band up. But I think Esa and Tommy from Amorphis, they were quite determined from the beginning, especially Esa. I think he had some kind of a master plan in his mind back then already. But when it comes to other bands like Susma, those guys just went to like basic works and wanted to earn money from you know, whatever kind of work they were doing. The drummer is like cook in a restaurant, for example, and it's kind of a easier and less risky way to live. And since Amorphis had some kind of following already during 95 or something, there was kind of a framework for the band to become bigger. So we had already secured our place in the scene, but many of the other bands didn't have that possibility. For example, Xysma, they weren't that big, and it's when you have a family, for example, you have kids and a wife, especially, you don't have time for a band anymore, and then you have to work as well. So there's no resources to play music and come up with records. But with Amorphis, it was different kind of a ball game, because we were able to earn some money with the music, for example, and therefore that drove us a little bit further.
Okay. So at this
And
point,
now when the old bands, they have grown up their kids, and their lives has stabilized. Now they have possibility to come again, like Xysma did, for example.
okay. Well, we are very close to this interview only, so it is impossible not to compare the things that were done in the 90s. And now you have Tommy on vocals, and there is always a nostalgia for many fans, hoping that is the other Tommy will once sings these songs in future presentations. So did you hear some, or perhaps do you think in the past how will be the sounds with Tommy at that time, with the record sessions, if the Tommy will appear in the 90s, the new Tommy, the actual vocals appear in the 90s with this kind of, well, they have the no approach on vocals. So how do you think of used to be these tales for the Townsend Lakes with at that time with the vocals of Tommy? Because we have now the record live, the live sessions, etc. with the new Tommy, but the old with this new Tommy presents in the 90s. Are you think about it if this happens sometimes?
Well, I don't know. It would be a great album still, and it would be totally different from what it is, because Tommy Joutsen's vocals are way different than Tommy Koivusaari's, and but still the technology was different back then as well. So Tommy Joutsen would sound different with that technology too. So and there's, for example, lots of echoes and reverbs on the vocals on Tales from the Thousand Lakes, which we don't use that much nowadays with Amorphis. So that would probably bring Tommy Joutsen's vocals a little bit nearer to Tommy Koivusaari's vocals on that kind of version.
Okay, and the last of questions for this interview. As you know, mostly of the bands are re-recording the album. So the brothers Cavalera record the first two albums from Sepultura. Now a lot of bands are re-releasing, remastering. So this kind of topic. If you will receive an offer, perhaps from the label or perhaps another labels, to say, hey, would you interested to re-recording Tales from the Townsend Lake? Will you do it? Or perhaps you say, like a lot of bands says, no, it's a product of time. It's impossible to rewrite or to re-record an album that's special, especially if your milestone there.
Well, personally, I don't find it a really good idea, because it is a product of time, and probably we wouldn't be able to do it the better way than it is already. I've listened to Cavalera's re-recordings, and they sound really good. But they're almost like the original ones already. So it just has a little bit better sound. But now, for example, we didn't have much skills back then. We didn't play that well, and we had really bad gear, and that's something which makes Tales from the Thousand Lakes a little bit more unique. And if we do it now when we can play a little bit better, and we have better instruments and we tune our guitars, it wouldn't be the same thing. So it wouldn't make any sense for me.
Okay, well, that's true. So, well, Olli, the sad times arrive at this interview. I hope you enjoy this interview like me. Well, I get a lot of answers for this mythic album for me especially. Or I think for a lot of fans around the world. So, is there anything else that you want to add to your Latin American fans that expect you return perhaps in a couple of years, next year, who knows? Methadarium followers.
Well, just listen to the live album, give it a chance, and yeah, come to the concert as well. It's we are going to North America soon on early September, and we will tour like 4 or 5 weeks there with Dark Tranquility, and we will play probably with the other album cycle in 1 or 2 years. We will begin playing in Latin America again, and probably North America. So come and see us and come to say hi to us personally. All right.